Han Li, as an elder of the Luo Yun sect, was invited along with two other Nascent Soul cultivators to support the front lines against the Mulan people's offensive. Unexpectedly, the situation was even more grim than anticipated. Seeing this situation, Han Li's heart sank slightly. I have long heard of your great reputation from Brother Liu. That you were able to escape safely, fellow Taoist, is truly a cause for celebration. A hint of goodwill appeared on Han Li's lips. He said politely, "This pathetic state I am in, I must be quite a sight for you, fellow Taoist Han." This time, it was all thanks to fellow Taoist Ma coming to my aid. Otherwise, it would have been truly dangerous. The Bushi cultivator had also heard of Han Li's existence from others. Therefore, his face showed no surprise. Instead, he said with a wry smile, and showed his gratitude toward the old man surnamed Ma. "It's nothing, merely a trivial effort. In fact, those pursuers retreated on their own before I even made a move. It actually left me a bit frustrated," the old man said with a chuckle. "It's because the ore of your ancient treasure was too astonishing, fellow Taoist. Those pursuing Mulan people were not confident, so naturally, they were unwilling to clash head-on. However, this invasion by the mages is truly peculiar, Taoist Ma. It shouldn't end up like a message later. A strange mage telling us to be more careful. Although that person never made a move, their aura was indeed extremely bizarre. They might truly be some kind of non-human. Besides, other than these three, I'm not sure if there are other high-level mages hiding and yet to be revealed." Bu Yunhe sighed and said. He didn't seem to approve of the idea. "It seems we should first gauge their strength before acting. If the enemy is too powerful, we should rely on the Great Formation to hold them off. In any case, our current mission is simply to buy some time for those behind us." When the burly, tough-browed man heard this, he also nodded and said in agreement. Bu Shuangpu frowned slightly, but he showed an indifferent expression. He did not insist further. Han Li and Elder Ma Din had no other opinions either. So then, the burly, tough-browed man first had Warrior Chongchu take Bu Yunhe to a quiet room to heal his wounds. He also instructed Ying Ning and the other cultivators to make arrangements for the defeated cultivators from Tiantai Valley, and then immediately ordered more manpower to guard the Great Formation. Watching the burly man arrange all of this in perfect order, Han Li secretly nodded to himself. It seemed that the Nine Nations Alliance having this man guard a front alone, to stand watch over this place, was not without reason. Just at that moment, everyone inside the hall suddenly heard the rumbling of war drums, faintly coming from the distance, and the sound grew louder and louder, like thunder on a clear day. The expressions of everyone in the hall gave us a timely warning. The burly man surnamed Lu first cupped his fists towards Han Li and the other two. Then, he turned his head towards the two core formation cultivators who had retreated with Bu Yunhe. He then gave his orders. Of the two men, one had thick brows and large eyes, and a dark complexion, while the other had thin eyebrows and a rather gloomy expression. Hearing the burly man surnamed Lu say this, after exchanging a glance, the two of them immediately cupped their fists and readily agreed. Meanwhile, Han Li leisurely gazed towards the source of the drumming sounds. His face was expressionless. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. To the south of Yellow Dragon Mountain, a vast, dense legion of Mulan spell masters were riding on various bizarrely shaped flying magical artifacts, arranged in neat formations high up in the sky, looking down upon a sea of emerald green fog that was dozens of miles wide. At the very front of the spell masters' great army, over a dozen people stood shoulder to shoulder. All kinds of spiritual light and treasured auras flickered around them. These were the high-ranking spellmasters of the Mulan people, and among them, 3 individuals were the most eye-catching. One was bathed in a red glow. A strange, living tongue as thick as a bull was coiled all around his body. Another person was gaunt and thin, as tall as a bamboo pole. It seemed a gust of wind could blow him over. And there was another person cloaked in a black robe, whose face could not be seen clearly, but his entire body emitted a sinister dark aura, and faint ghostly wails could be heard from within his robe, making one shiver uncontrollably, not daring to approach. This was indeed the case. Everyone else was clustered around the other two. Only this black-robed mage stood all alone in front of the crowd, as if he was not with the other mages, and the gazes of the other mages towards the black-robed man were evasive and flickering, filled with awe. But if one looked closely, they would discover that within this awe, there was also a hidden trace of disgust. The other two high-level mages gathered together, whispering about something in low voices, seemingly discussing how to break the formation. After a moment, the two finished their discussion. The incomparably tall mage among them swayed, and wrapped in a ball of green light, arrived beside the black-robed man. Mr. Takhua, Has the great formation of the cultivators here been activated? It seems to be even more formidable than the last one. Moreover, I've heard there are quite a few Nascent Soul cultivators here as well. I'm afraid this will take some more time. This Nascent Soul Dharma Master said to the black-robed person with an exceptionally polite smile. There's no need for us to make the first move. They are already coming out. Let's first test the divine powers of the cultivators here and see. The black-robed cultivator shook his head. His voice was hoarse and stiff, and also indistinct. It was as if he had no tongue, making it extremely uncomfortable to listen to. But as soon as he said this, that tall and thin Dharma Master immediately looked hastily towards the sea of fog. He seemed to have extreme faith in the black-robed person's words. Sure enough, the originally motionless sea of fog below began to churn ceaselessly just as they spoke. After suddenly splitting in two, a passage several yards wide was revealed. Then, flashes of light flickered unceasingly from within. 7 long streaks of escaping light shot out. After circling for a moment above the sea of fog, several figures were revealed. It was Han Li and the others who, at the suggestion of the burly man Tumei, had not brought any low-level cultivators this time, except for those 2 core formation cultivators. Only Taoist Changshu and Shijian were in the rear. After Han Li steadied himself, his gaze turned towards the large black mass above. Looking at the oppressive crowd of mages, the dozen or so mages in the lead naturally also caught his attention, especially that black-robed person with a sinister and demonic aura. The moment Han Li laid eyes on him, his eyes couldn't help but narrow. The first feeling this person gave him was to immediately recall the revered Master Zhuangnu, who had died by his hand. Could the other party really be an underworld messenger? A sense of vigilance rose in Han Li's heart as the thought occurred to him. Back when the revered Master Zhuangnu had not yet possessed a physical body, he also had the same sinister and gloomy aura, his entire being filled with an eerie energy. But it seemed to be a little different from this person's aura. As for the specific difference, Han Li couldn't quite put his finger on it for the moment. Just as Han Li and the others were watching the sky, after a commotion among the mages above, that mage with a strange python coiled around his body whooshed as he transformed into ardent fireball and descended with great momentum. Seeing this, Old Man Tuomai and the others all watched with cold gazes, not saying a word. No one showed any sign of panic. As long as this mage wasn't intentionally seeking death, he would never dare to make a move alone. Sure enough, under the hostile gazes of the cultivators, the giant fireball, at a height of a full 5 to 600 feet above them and stopped. But the heat from its roaring flames, even from such a great distance, still made everyone knit their brows and feel inwardly alarmed. So, the Great Grand Master of the Fire Worship Tribe has finally come out. Are you planning to have a contest of skills before we talk? How do you intend to compete? One-on-one, or a free-for-all melee? A faint figure inside the fireball flickered a few times, and a thunderous, booming voice emerged from within, making the surrounding space hum and vibrate. This caused the expressions of the bald-browed man and his companions to change slightly. One-on-one. Life and death will be left to fate. The bald-browed man glared at the figure in the fireball, and replied icily, without a second thought. Ha ha, good. That suits this Grand Master's intentions perfectly. This Grand Master will be your opponent for the first round. Which one of you is first? After a wild laugh, the person in the fireball brazenly issued a direct challenge. The bald-browed man and the others were naturally furious. The elderly man surnamed Ma's expression turned even darker. He immediately transformed into a streak of white light and shot out. Seeing this, the large man surnamed Lu hesitated for a moment, but did not speak up to stop him. So, it was tacitly agreed that Elder Ma Din would fight the first duel. After all, among the 4 Nascent Soul cultivators that came to his mind, besides Han Li, the newly advanced cultivator, among the 3 of them, it was really hard to say whose divine abilities were greater. The Ku Yao in the fireball in the sky saw a white light fly out. Without a word, he flew high up to retreat. After a moment, the 2 of them arrived, one after the other, at the very center between the sea of fog and the shaman army. Both of them stopped their escape lights. This way, both of them could attack without any restraint, without fearing that someone from the other side would suddenly intervene in the great battle. How are the divine abilities of this Mulan great shaman? Does he have any special techniques? The big man, Tumei, suddenly turned his head toward the horse-faced cultivator at his side, and asked with a grave expression, his fire tribute cultivation technique is incredibly powerful, especially that fire serpent on him. It's extremely agile. It's simply impossible to defend against. The one who was stationed with us, another core formation fellow Taoist at Tiantai Valley, was entangled by that beast of his. and was turned to ashes. The horse-faced cultivator replied, a look of resentment flashing across his face. Oh, is that so? If I remember correctly, the righteous or art of the righteous pavilion. It seems to be impervious to both water and fire. Using it to subdue evil and smite ghosts against this master should give us a slight advantage, right? The bald, burly man turned his face to the other side. He asked, somewhat lacking in confidence. That's hard to say. If it were an ordinary evil attribute technique, the righteous or art would naturally have no problem dealing with it. But I can see that the opposing master's body is permeated with fire. He has clearly grasped the true essence of the world's spiritual samadhi fire. I'm afraid the righteous or art won't be able to counter it easily. However, among the few of us, only fellow Taoist Ma is the most suitable to deal with this person. Even if the righteous or art, even if it cannot defeat the enemy, it won't be affected by the opponent's demonic fire, and there is no worrying of one's mind being attacked by the fire. A thoughtful look flashed in Gu Shuangpu's eyes. He said slowly. Hearing this, the bald, burly man immediately confirmed what he had been thinking. He let out a long sigh of relief. The look on his face relaxed a little. Han Li, however, was focused on the fire serpent within that fireball. He took a couple of extra glances at it. As a thought struck his mind, a blue light flickered in his eyes a few times. A strange expression suddenly appeared on his face, but he immediately returned to normal as if nothing had happened. At this time, high in the air, the old man surnamed Ma formed a hand seal. A layer of soft white light appeared on his body. At the same time, he opened his mouth. A fluorescent light the size of a walnut shot out from his mouth. It grew longer as it met the wind, transforming into a silver-white discipline ruler. With a slight tremble, the ruler's fluorescent light shifted. Its clear ring was like a phoenix crying from the 9 heavens. The Ku Yao opposite him, however, was a far cry from its initial rampage. It made no move whatsoever. He just crossed his arms, watching coldly from within the fiery glow. A hint of mockery appeared on his face. When the old man Ma saw this, he became filled with rage. He let out a cold snort and was about to make the first move. But just at that moment, a faint voice transmission entered his ears. The voice was almost inaudibly quiet, but it was also exceptionally clear. The old man surnamed Ma was startled. He then glanced down, surprised and suspicious. His gaze swept across the few people watching the battle below, and landed on Han Li, who wore a peculiar expression. Seeing this, Han Li looked up at him, and gave a faint smile. The old man surnamed Ma was stunned. Then, half believing and half doubting, he raised a hand and looked toward the Ku Yao. The radiance on his body, a solemn expression gradually appeared on his face. The fire python on you, in an ordinary spirit beast, is it? After his gaze flickered a few times, the old man surnamed Ma asked Ku Yao opposite him grimly, just how formidable are you? The fire python on my body is condensed from the fire spirit of heaven and earth. How can it be compared to any mere spirit beast? Ku Yao, amidst the fiery light, was slightly taken aback, but then he sneered. Then, with a shake of his body, the fire python on him erupted in a brilliant red light. It suddenly flew dancing into the sky, and in the red light, a single horn grew from its head and sharp claws appeared. It actually transformed into a fire jowl with shimmering red scales, bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws above Ku Yao's head. Shaping of the fire spirit, the bald, burly man watching the battle below couldn't help but cry out in shock. Beside him, Gu Shuangpu's expression also turned quite grim. The old man surnamed Ma's heart sank even further. The opponent's level of mastery in fire tribute cultivation techniques was so high that he had actually reached the stage of refining a fire spirit. This is definitely not something an ordinary Nascent Soul cultivator could achieve. It seems I'm in for a tough fight. Thinking of this, the old man surnamed Ma had originally only planned to use 70% of his strength against the enemy. That intention was now completely gone. Instead, he took a deep breath, and with a great flick of his sleeve, an object wrapped in a 5-colored glowing light shot out from his sleeve. After circling once, it stopped a foot in front of him, and began to float motionlessly in midair. Whether it was the cultivators below, or the spellcasters in the distance, all looked over with curiosity. You must understand, no matter what kind of treasure it is, once it can flash with a 5-colored glowing light, it is most likely not an ordinary grade treasure. Panli also slightly narrowed his eyes. Staring intently at the object, he saw that the object was long, thin, and cylindrical. It turned out to be a light yellow scroll several feet in length. This scroll faced the opposing Ku Yao. Under the old man with the surname Ma's solemn expression and an incantation's urging, it slowly unfurled downwards. As it turned out, inside was a seemingly ordinary Bagua diagram. At this, everyone was stunned. But just at this moment, the old man with the surname Ma cast a seemingly simple magical seal. Instantly, the five-colored glowing light on it erupted brilliantly, and astonishingly, immense fluctuation of power suddenly emanated from the diagram. The opposing Ku Yao, upon seeing this, also seemed to realize something was wrong. It immediately pointed at the old man opposite it without a second thought. The fire jiao coiled on its head also raised its neck, and opened its great maw. Boundless crimson flames gushed out incessantly from the jiao's mouth. In an instant, they engulfed the old man Ma and the Bagua diagram in a sea of fire. His companions, the burly man Tumei and the others, showed no signs of worrying. They knew in their hearts that since Cultivator Ma had brought out the painted scroll to fight, it could not possibly be just for show, or be completely useless. Sure enough, the old man Ma in the center of the fiery sea formed hand seals toward the scroll before him. The image on it suddenly flipped to face upwards. Then, a white light flashed, and the roar of a fierce wind arose. A pillar of hazy white wind shot up from the Bagua diagram into the sky. It instantly expanded to a radius of dozens of yards. The surrounding flames were pushed back by the wind, advancing with unstoppable momentum. In the blink of an eye, the vast sea of fire was reduced by nearly half, and with a furious roar from the old man Ma, a silver-red beam shot out from the pillar of wind, aiming straight for the Ku on the other side, completely ignoring the Huo Jiao above its head. It seems the old man Ma was well aware that as long as he injured the Ku, the Huo Jiao, which was spiritually connected to it, would naturally have its power greatly reduced. Ku Yao's face was expressionless. After the corner of his mouth twitched, he flicked a single hand. A red flying dagger shot out from the palm of his hand. It transformed into a streak of red light, meeting the silver-red glow head-on. This flying dagger was a sparkling, crimson red. Its radiance was dazzling. It instantly intercepted the silver-red glow. They clashed violently in midair. Instantly, the red light and silver gleam intertwined, becoming indistinguishable. For a moment, it was impossible to tell which had the upper hand. Seeing this, Ku Yao, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. With a flip of both his hands, a brilliant light shone in his hands. Two hazy red banners, about an inch long, appeared. He cast the small banners into the air. With a tearing sound, the banners expanded in the wind. They grew to about 10 feet tall, and a low, deep sound like a sudden downpour began. It came from Ku Yao's mouth, emitted with a gray hue. The banners glowed intensely with red light. At the same time, two thick pillars of fire shot out from the surface of the banners. They converged and merged right overhead. A large fire cloud immediately began to faintly take shape. In the span of a breath, the sound of the downpour stopped. He opened his mouth and spat out a ball of red essence cha. It sprayed right onto the fire jiao's body. The fire jiao's spirits were greatly lifted. After a long, dragon-like roar, shaking its head and wagging its tail, it plunged head first into the fire clouds. The crimson fire clouds churned and rolled. A moment later, they began to diminish rapidly. Below, Han Li, who was watching the battle, narrowed his eyes at this sight. A blue glint flashed through his pupils. Through the divine power of his bright-side spirit eyes, he was astonished to discover that the fire jiao was hiding within the clouds, frantically inhaling the surrounding fire clouds with its massive mouth. In the blink of an eye, the fire clouds were completely devoured by this jiao. Its body began to grow wildly and rapidly, as if it were being inflated with air. It grew to a massive size of over 100 feet. Its head was as enormous as a house. Its fangs were bared, looking ferocious and terrifying. At this moment, the hazy white hurricane on the opposite side, and the surrounding sea of fire also vanished completely, revealing the old man with the air of a Taoist immortal. The old man, surnamed Ma, was holding the Bagua diagram in both hands. He coldly glanced at the massive and intimidating fire jiao. Without a word, he tossed the scroll in his hand upwards. The object transformed into a streak of rosy light, shooting straight up into the sky. In an instant, it pierced into the clouds high above, vanished without a trace, as if it had flown beyond the heavens. Ku Yao was stunned by this sight. But, in that brief moment of hesitation, a prolonged fluctuation of spiritual energy appeared above his head. Then, wisps of five-colored spiritual light descended from the sky. Next, an incomparably huge trigram diagram suddenly materialized within the radiant light. Its range covered an area dozens of yards wide. It descended mercilessly. Ku Yao's expression changed drastically. Without a second thought, he pointed his finger, gathering fire at its tip. Instantly, his neck bulged as immense young energy surged through him. A pillar of crimson light erupted violently from his mouth, striking the bottom of the trigram diagram. The massive diagram paused for a slight moment, then continued its descent as if nothing had hit it. This time, Ku Yao's face turned pale. He rubbed his hands together and shook them violently. Countless fist-sized fireballs swarmed out from his palms, densely shooting up into the sky. Seeing this scene, Han Li's heart stirred. This wasn't a fire bullet spell activated by numerous talismans, but fireballs conjured instantly and simultaneously through his own cultivation. It seems the spells of a magic adept are truly extraordinary, far surpassing ordinary 5 elements Taoist arts. They are much more suited for actual combat. Just as Han Li was secretly pondering, numerous fireballs struck below the giant formation diagram like meteors, but it was completely useless. That giant Bagua diagram didn't waver in the slightest. Instead, its speed of descent was incredibly fast. Like a small city, it trapped the unprepared Ku Yao along with Huo right underneath it. Instantly, the observing cultivators from both sides could only see a giant formation diagram, slowly rotating in the air. They could no longer observe Ku Yao's movements. The elderly man surnamed Ma, who had succeeded in his attack, did not show any joy because of it. Instead, with a grim expression, he sat down cross-legged, forming hand seals with both hands. The soft white light on his body flowed like colored glaze, shining brilliantly. At the same time, the giant formation diagram erupted with a great rosy light, as if in response. Meanwhile, bursts of explosive thunder resounded from within. The Bagua diagram began to flicker. Spiritual light flashed. Mr. Tongku, is Ku Shangxi all right in there? If he's in danger, we don't need to abide by any one-on-one rule, we'll just swarm him to be rescued from inside. The reason is clear. For a cultivator to possess such a bizarre ancient treasure, I truly never would have expected it. The high-level mage saw this scene. A look of concern appeared on his face. He turned and politely asked the black-robed person beside him, "Heh, no need to worry. This Tai Zhuan Bagua diagram was refined by an ancient cultivator. It is indeed an exceptionally powerful ancient treasure. However, the cultivator using this treasure has not yet truly mastered its use. He is merely relying on the Bagua diagram's immense spiritual power to forcefully trap his enemy, that's all. At this rate, it won't be able to hold him for long. This kind of barbaric, brute force method of powering the array consumes a considerable amount of his own mana. This person is truly foolish to the extreme. But then again, it's not surprising. In such a remote place, how many people would know the true way to use such a precious ancient treasure?" The black-robed person let out a few low, eerie laughs, and muttered vaguely. His words were full of utter disdain for the cultivators of Tian Nan. Hearing what the black-robed person said, the high-level mage felt his heart ease. He reconsidered his original plan to have the mages behind him charge forward all at once. The threat was temporarily neutralized. In response, the bald man MEI and the others watching the battle from below had mixed expressions of joy and worrying on their faces. At first, when they saw the 8 trigrams diagram trap the enemy practitioner, they were indeed excited for a moment. But later, when they heard sounds coming from within the formation from time to time, and saw the old man surnamed Ma sitting cross-legged to the side casting his spell with a grave expression, they realized this magical duel was not over yet. They were slightly disappointed, and the old man himself was also complaining bitterly to himself. He had only recently obtained this treasure. Previously, he had only used it against cultivators at the foundation establishment stage. Once those people were trapped inside this treasure, they had absolutely no power to resist. He could activate the restrictive spells within the formation at will, and kill them one by one. But this practitioner named Ku Yao, despite being trapped inside the formation diagram, was unexpectedly able to rely on his own divine abilities to temporarily block the attacks of thunder and fire. He even continuously commanded a giant fire flood dragon to wildly attack the formation's restrictions. This forced him to have to continuously supply spiritual power into the formation diagram. In order to stabilize the formation, the magical duel in the sky quieted down for a moment, except for the massive formation diagram amidst the glowing clouds, from which faint rumbling sounds could still be heard. For a moment, Chang'an was dead silent. The look of worrying on the faces of the bald-browed man and the others grew deeper. Han Li stood alone to one side. He raised his head and looked towards the sky. His face was expressionless, but in his mind, he was conversing with the anew. This fellow Taoist Ma is truly wasting a heavenly treasure to activate the great profound 8 trigrams diagram in such a way. You must know, its power is no less than the Z. Chengdu, an ancient treasure. Yanu clicked its tongue incessantly, as if greatly lamenting the waste of such a formation diagram. The great profound 8 trigrams diagram. You know of this ancient treasure? Han Li, while remaining expressionless, secretly asked via voice transmission. Of course, this 8 trigrams diagram is also from the ancient era, a rather famous ancient treasure. However, this one seems to be just a crude imitation. Otherwise, even if he couldn't unleash the diagram's true divine powers, it would still be enough to trap the opponent to death. A true, top-grade 8 trigrams diagram wouldn't consume so much spiritual power. Yin Yu replied swiftly, for a crude imitation to have such astonishing power. I wonder what a true, top-grade formation diagram would be like. But, you said the Zichengdu's power is no less than this treasure. Could it be that ancient artifact has some special activation technique? Han Li grew suspicious. He pressed on with a question. This treasure shouldn't be so troublesome. You just need to infuse it with spiritual power to use it, and the restrictions and yang essence fire on it can be mastered after just a few attempts at figuring them out. Yin Yue replied crisply. After hearing this, Han Li fell silent and said no more. His eyes flickered for a moment before he looked back up at the sky. But after only a glance or two, he frowned and thought to himself, not good. An earth-shattering bang erupted from the formation diagram. The Bagua diagram in the center suddenly twisted and trembled. Then, countless pillars of crimson light shot out in all directions. The entire formation diagram was instantly riddled with holes. It was completely in tatters. Just as the crowd watched in horror, another deafening rumble came from a corner of the formation diagram. A ball of fierce fire shot out from within. It flew directly to a height of over 100 feet. As the fiery light subsided, it revealed a face as red as blood, belonging to the withered fire dragon. At some point, it had shrunk back to its original length of about 10 feet. It also looked completely listless. On the other side, the old man surnamed Ma was in no better condition. His face was also ashen white. His eyes were lifeless. But the old man gritted his teeth. He reached out his hand and beckoned to the already tattered formation diagram. The damaged Bagua diagram flashed with a radiant glow and shot up into the sky. A moment later, the formation diagram transformed back into a scroll and fell, landing in his hand. After the old man glanced at the scroll, his expression turned incredibly livid. The item in his hand was actually riddled with holes. It had become like a sieve. It was damaged beyond all repair. It's a pity if fellow Taoist Ku Yao hadn't been in such a hurry to get out, and had held on inside for a little longer. Without using the fire forest origin power, that cultivator would most likely have run out of spiritual power, and would have withdrawn the formation on his own. Now fellow Taoist Ku Yao has also lost a great deal of vital energy. Neither of them can gain the upper hand now, the black-robed person said with some regret. The tall and thin Dharma master was stunned upon hearing this. After looking down, a look of realization appeared on his face. The old man's face turned pale. He examined the scroll in his hands over and over again, but still couldn't bear to throw it away. After putting it into his storage pouch, he glared fiercely at Ku Yu across from him. Seeing the old man's expression, Ku Yu snorted coldly. He stomped on the fire jowl beneath his feet. Flames surged around his body once more. A red light reappeared. He was about to make a desperate move. How would this next clash between the two turn out? Both of them have consumed too much of their magical power now. If they continue, there won't be any conclusive result. The tall, thin cultivator suddenly spoke loudly from high in the sky, stopping Kaiu's actions. His following words were directed towards the bald man and the other Tian Nan cultivators. The bald man was a bit surprised to hear this, but he exchanged a look with Gu Shuangpu and nodded in agreement. All right, let's call this match a draw. Hearing the words of the tall, thin cultivator and the bald man, although old man Ma was unwilling, he knew that continuing to fight would be futile. He could only fly back reluctantly. On the other side, Ku Yu was equally frustrated. He recalled the fire jowl from under his feet and flew back up into the sky resentfully. When old man Ma returned below, the bald man naturally offered a few words of comfort, which finally soothed the old man's expression a little. But just at that moment, on the side of the mages, the black-robed man and that very old elder whispered a few words in a low voice. As a result, the black-robed man actually floated down lightly. He stopped at the site of the previous great battle. Then, his gloomy gaze swept across the cultivators. Your opponent this time is me. I'll say this up front. This will be a fight to the death. Don't fantasize that someone will suddenly stop the duel, the black-robed man said in a hoarse, muffled voice. A look of contempt flashed through his eyes. The black-robed man's words were so arrogant. Naturally, the bald, burly man and Gu Shuangpu's expressions changed. A look of anger appeared in their eyes. But the two of them really didn't dare to rashly jump out to accept this challenge. After all, they both knew. The two Nascent Soul cultivators who died in the previous battle had both died at the hands of this unfamiliar type of spellcaster. Even if they were conceded, their lives were on the line. They couldn't help but hesitate. Let me go and test him. Han Li suddenly spoke calmly. Fellow Taoist, You're going. Fellow Taoist Han, you must be very careful. If anything seems wrong, the three of us will naturally step in to save you. When the bald, burly man saw Han Li volunteer to fight, he was first taken aback, but then he secretly sighed in relief. But on the surface, he naturally offered many words of caution. Han Li listened and gave a majestic smile. He said nothing more. Cyan light flowed around his body. He leapt up, transforming into a streak of cyan light and soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the cyan streak arrived near the black-robed person. The brilliant light faded. Han Li stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. His face was completely expressionless. The black-robed person's eyes flickered. He sized Han Li up from head to toe. His gaze gradually grew ice-cold. His pupils also began to change from black to green. He appeared extremely demonic. Han Li's eyes narrowed as he suddenly asked a question. Are you a demon or a ghost? Heh. Do you think this old man doesn't look human? The black-robed person opposite him heard Han Li's question. He did not get angry. Instead, he sneered and said, at the same time, from his body, wisps of ink-black energy began to emerge. The wails of ghosts rose along with it. For a moment, gusts of sinister wind blew from across him. It was like a ghostly realm. So, you are human after all. That's good. It seems you are a heretical cultivator who practices the way of demons and ghosts. Han Li let out a breath. His expression remained unchanged as he spoke. Hemph, Junior, you sure talk a lot of nonsense. Stop trying to probe my background. Once I have eliminated you, you won't have to scheme anymore, the black-robed person said in a hoarse voice. At the same time, the black aura on his body surged violently. His figure flickered in and out of existence within the black aura. I have no more patience to waste on you. Now, hand over your life. The black-robed person's form shifted within the black aura. His hands formed a hand seal. His body suddenly swelled to several times its size. From a person of seemingly ordinary stature, he transformed into 20 feet tall. Although it was hard to see clearly through the obstructing yin energy, the form of the black-robed person, whose clothes had been torn apart, was faintly revealed. His mouth was filled with sharp fangs. No wonder. So many cultivators believe these strange practitioners are all transformations of non-human beings. A blue light flashed in Han Li's pupils. The giant's appearance, with its green face and sharp fangs, was reflected with extreme clarity in his mind. This was Han Li seeing clearly. After the giant's demonic transformation, for the first time, a grim expression appeared on his face. This giant's current demonized form was surprisingly the same as the one he fought from the successor of the Six Paths that day. A figure from the conjured 6th level True Demon Palace is exactly the same as the Phantom.